Lessons in Branding and Consistency. A textual analysis of two major retail brands by Jaleesa Campbell is for Queen's University, Com 610, The Social Creation of Organizing. As an outline of my presentation, first we're going to look at a brief introduction, then I'll talk about my textual analysis method, my findings, implications, and then lastly my references. So, what comes to mind when you think about branding? I thought about these things: colors, a logo, advertisements, prices, as well as people, such as the target market or target audience. Then I'd like to ask you guys, are any of you shoppers of TJ Maxx or JCPenney? I have to raise my hand because I know that I am. I shop at these places as well as others, but I want you guys to think about why you shop at these places in terms of branding and consistency. Textual analysis method. For my approach, I use the cultural studies approach, which really involves examining a culture by looking at its cultural elements. In this case, I'm using this approach to examine how a brand is comprised of cultural, or in this case, brand elements. For my methodology, I'm using an interpretive analysis, which involves taking an outsider's view to interpret something. So I want to interpret or examine the branding and consistency of two major retailers, TJ Maxx and JCPenney. And then for my text, I use TJ Maxx's Instagram profile as of June 2018 and JCPenney's 2011-2012 rebranding of its logo and pricing strategy. Here are my findings from an interpretive analysis. Calling all Maxxinistas. Here's a look at TJ Maxx's Instagram branding. So, TJ Maxx's Instagram profile really emphasizes the company's target audience, which focuses on women who enjoy the treasure hunt for unique and off-price items. And for the sake of the presentation, I'm going to explain how the company uses its logo, color, and images to create its brand identity. Logo. A logo is one of the key touch points of a brand that can establish associations over time. Now, we don't normally think about all this technical jargon when we think about a logo. For instance, when we see a Coca-Cola logo or Pepsi, we automatically think, okay, that's a dark, fizzy beverage or drink that I might like to have, right? We don't necessarily think about it being a key touch point that gathers associations, but that's because that's what we're doing in our minds when we constantly see this logo being used in certain contexts. So when I did an interpretive analysis of TJ Maxx's logo, I noticed an overlapping X. To me, that denotes extraness. I also noticed rounded letters. To me, that appears modern and contemporary. And I also noticed the use of red and white. To me, that represents contrast. We've got red for boldness, and then we've got white being recessive. Let's talk more about color for a few. Now, colors carry associations that can be universal or contextual. In terms of universal, that means that most people may feel the same way or think the same way when they see a certain color. When we think about contextual color association, for instance, to give an example, if we think about the color blue, we might think about sky or we might think about water. But when we see the color blue on a toothpaste bottle, we think clean. Okay, so that's an example of contextual use. Now, colors need to be used conscientiously with branding. And thinking about TJ Maxx's color use of red and white, I immediately thought bold and exciting. For white, I thought about minimalism as well as perfectionism. And this highlights how TJ Maxx wants to excite its consumers to come in and shop for unique items, but in a no-frills environment. Minimalism, right? The finds are unique and right, perfectionism, for the woman who enjoys novelty and the hunt. So that's color. Now we're going to look at images. Images. Like color, images associated with brands also convey messages. TJ Maxx highlights who the Maxxinista is and her interest through imagery on Instagram. I chose these three images from TJ Maxx's Instagram feed, and I believe they do a great job in conveying who the Maxxinista is. For example, she's a woman that likes to dress boldly. She likes to be out and about. She likes quirky sayings. She might like mugs. She also likes really different and nice shoes. So I think TJ Maxx does a nice job in terms of its logo, colors, as well as imagery and conveying who the company seeks to serve as a consumer. Now let's go ahead and talk about JCPenney with its branding and consistency. What happened to the JCPenney I used to know? A note on branding and consistency. I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but from 2011 to 2012, JCPenney underwent rebranding to include a change of its logo and pricing strategy. JCPenney at this time was under the administration of CEO Ron Johnson, who has connections with Apple. I want you guys to keep in mind that JCPenney's target market is a woman who likes bargains, but she does not have much time to spend in store. So JCPenney's target market is not the Maxinista. She does not enjoy treasure hunting. She probably already knows what she wants, but she wants to get it for a bargain price. Logo change. JCPenney's 2012 logo redesign removed the name, left the first three letters, and added a blue square. This resulted in a 20% drop of consumer awareness from 76% with the May 2011 logo redesign down to 56% with the March 2012 logo redesign. What was probably happening is with consumers, they had a hard time recognizing the new JCPenney logo and associating it with the organization. Remember that logos build up associations over time, and I don't believe that this was a really good strategic move for JCPenney. Pricing strategy change. JCPenney is well known for its discounts and coupons. Under new administration, the company introduced what's called fair and square pricing for a flat price, discount averse, no games approach. And to me, this was not a good strategy move for JCPenney because what actually happened was JCPenney alienated its target audience, which was the woman who liked bargains, right? She wanted to know when she was getting a good deal. With fair and square pricing, she had a hard time trying to figure out whether or not she was really getting a deal on an item or not. And this leads me to my implications based on findings. So as a few points, it's important that organizations make sure they carefully align their brand elements, like their logos, their colors, and images, to create an identity that is recognized as they intend or as purposed. It's also important that they carefully choose and use colors with universal and contextual associations in mind, as we talked about earlier. One way that organizations can keep track of digital elements of brands is to create a brand board in which they could store a logo, colors, typefaces, and any images that might guide the inspiration. For example, with Liz & Co here, we see that Liz & Co appears to be retro, bright, bold, and even playful in a sense. And as a few last implications, it's important for organizations to cater to the target market based on their interests and also do not alienate the target market with too many and sudden changes. When we think back to the examples we just talked about with JCPenney's logo redesign and pricing strategy, we might notice that there were too many changes probably at once, and that JCPenney also alienated its customer base by changing up the pricing strategy. Lastly, it's important that organizations build connections and brand loyalty through consistent messaging and interactions, such as through their logo, imagery, and also even pricing strategy. If we look to the right with the example of Liz & Co again, we notice that the advertisement retains some of the elements found in the logo, such as the shapes, also a few of the colors, and it also retains a playful feel. And that concludes my presentation, you guys. I hope that you found it insightful, and here are my references. Thank you all so much for watching.